Hello, and welcome to the 19th episode of Recluse Horror. This is a daily horror movie review podcast. Just a little background on the project. Back in April, I decided I wanted to watch and review a horror movie every single day. I have done so for the past 286 days, although only, including today, the last 19 days have been podcasts. Before that, it was text reviews. So each episode, I review 2 movies, sometimes 3, but usually 2 movies. The first movie is one that I've watched that very night, and the second and sometimes third movie is one that I reviewed in text previously. I just go over whatever impressions I have left of the movie, aided by the text review. So every Friday, I call it Foreign Friday, I watch a international film. This time, I watched a Japanese movie called Parasyte Part 1 from 2014. Now, this is an adaptation of a manga and anime series, and I do think that most of the people who would be interested in this, and definitely most of the people who would like this, would be fans of that anime and manga series, but it does actually have a slight appeal if you're into Japanese movies beyond that. I honestly think this is probably my second favorite live-action adaptation of an anime or manga. If you've seen some of those before, they are generally not very good. Sometimes just awful. And I thought this did a good job of adapting it, especially considering how weird Parasyte is, especially how visually weird Parasyte is as a series. It's something that doesn't necessarily lend itself to live action, and I thought they did a really good job with it. Being my second favorite live-action adaptation, my first favorite is sort of borderline almost horror, and I almost reviewed it for the podcast. I was able to see it in the theater, and I was really excited. It's Blade of the Immortal by Takashi Miike. The person who wrote the manga is Hiroaki Samara. It's one of the only manga that I've ever actually read. It is fantastic. And the anime series is okay, but the live action movie was really, really good. And it lends itself a little bit, the circumstances are a little bit easier to get across in live action, and I love Takashi Miike. So it's just a little easier, I think, to do than this one was. But I was really impressed with this one. The CG and the practical effects both are much better than I've seen in a lot of, not even, anime or manga adaptations, just much better than I've seen in a lot of Japanese films to begin with, which is good because it really needs it. Some of the visuals that come out of the anime and manga are very outlandish, and while this stuff definitely doesn't look realistic, it at least looks not completely laughable, and it definitely looks like what was in the manga and the anime, which I was really surprised about. They were able to do that very well. The acting is also really good, which again can sometimes be a little harder to find in these. I think this must have been a pretty high budget adaptation. I think Parasyte was pretty popular in Japan when it came out, the anime series. And I know it topped the box office in Japan when it came out, this particular movie. The acting, though, getting back to that, some of the people in this did just a brilliant job, I thought, of capturing the characters that they were supposed to be playing, or just generally, maybe doing something different, but doing a wonderful job. There are only a couple of characters that don't really seem like they get it across, and there's a couple of rough patches with some of the main cast, but it's very, very minor. And again, basing all of this on a scale of like ordinary Japanese adaptations of anything, it's much better. Personally, I feel. So Parasyte, I realize I have not yet given you the synopsis really of this. Basically, takes place in Japan, shocking, where a group of parasites of unknown origins, I guess, start taking over humans. And one just regular Japanese high school student is able to sort of stop the parasite from reaching his brain, and instead the parasite only is able to take over his hand. So it sounds kind of silly, probably. I don't know. I have no frame of reference for that, honestly, when it comes to stuff like this, and especially when it comes from something where you already have a suspension of disbelief built in, from viewing it as an anime, as something that's not supposed to take place as much in the real world. So it probably sounds ridiculous if you're not familiar with that. And I really don't care. I guess most horror movies have, or at least many horror movies have, really outlandish premises. But I really enjoy this one. So one way this anime, speaking of the anime, sort of differs from your standard body snatcher sort of scenario is that not all of the characters, not all of the parasites behave in exactly identical manner. I feel like most body snatcher things, definitely Invasion of the Body Snatchers and a lot of other ones, everybody who's been, infected or taken over or however you want to, replaced, I guess, they act completely identical, usually completely emotionless, and they even have like a hive mind going in certain cases. And that's where this franchise sort of separates from the standard body snatcher story. And I really enjoy this. This is, I think, one of the things that most attracted me to the anime in the first place, or at least kept me going after the first few episodes. This movie does a really good job of capturing that feeling as well, that the parasites are different from one another. They are separate organisms, and they adapt completely differently to their surroundings, to their situation, to their circumstances, to their lives, honestly, than any other secondary, parasite. And I thought that was really interesting. They did a really good job of capturing that to me in this, and that is one of the big draws, I think, for anybody who isn't a fan of the anime or hasn't seen the anime. I think that's probably one of the biggest draws. As far as body snatcher stuff goes, they almost always act completely identical and emotionless, and these parasites do not do that. And seeing the different ways in which they adapt their circumstances is one of the best parts of this for me. I think probably I'm in the minority on that, but it's definitely one of the more interesting parts to me. And they did a good job of capturing it in this. I honestly thought maybe being that this was a much shorter runtime, that would be something that wouldn't quite be a focus for this. They would just try to focus on, the action and the gore and all of that. And they don't skimp out on that. Although, to be honest, sometimes it takes a little bit of time to get to that point, but once they do, it's there. But yeah, they honestly didn't skimp on that, and they did place that emphasis and that focus on it, and I thought that was really interesting. And it seems like they're going to go further into that in the second one. So I heard the second one not really as good, but what are you going to do? I'm still going to watch it. One of the problems, I think, with this adaptation is that, of course, being the movie is an hour and 45, it's a little over an hour and 45 minutes, and there's only so much time to get across what got across in the anime and the manga. Again, I haven't read the manga, I did see the anime, so I can't speak to anything, like how much of it, the changes or whatever, are from the manga. There are definitely some changes from the anime, but I'll get to that later. So one of the inherent problems with adapting anything with a source material that is an entire anime series into just a couple movies is that there's a lot of stuff that you have to skip out on. And honestly, there are some really interesting points that get skipped out on in this movie that I don't know if they come from the manga. I didn't read the manga. But the things that got left out are pretty easily understandable considering the amount of time that they had. The movie is only it's a little over an hour and 45 minutes, might be almost an hour and 50 minutes. But it is understandable, but it is sort of disappointing. Me personally, I like any of the information that you can give about like the parasites, how they function, how they, think, all of that stuff. That's the most interesting part about this anime series to me. And the screen adaptation definitely did a good job of getting some of that across, but some of the more intricate some of the ways that they go really in depth into it and in the anime are sort of absent from this. Again, totally understandable for the time. And realistically, most of the people who are watching this are going to be fans of either the manga or the anime and would be familiar with all of these little minute details had they seen those. So it wouldn't be a problem for them. Everybody else is probably working off the same page. But it does, for people who watch this movie with somebody maybe who did see the anime but didn't themselves, they are going to miss out on a lot of that nuance and a lot of that sort of, not necessarily, what do you call character development for an entire parasitic species? I don't know. The lore. I guess it's lore, just like it would be if it was a cryptid or something. But yeah, you do miss out on some of that lore, I guess. I honestly, I understand why they cut it, and it's probably some of the better stuff to cut from it, because it is a little more time consuming to go into. Some of my favorite characters in there were specifically in this adaptation were the actors playing Tamiya Ryoko, Shimada Hideo, and Migi. I thought all of them did a really good job, and Migi, for people who didn't see the anime series or read the manga, is the name of the parasite that takes over the high school kid's hand. For obvious reasons, is probably something that is a little hard to really play. It's definitely different than it is from in the anime. The voice is different, but I did like it. I was a little confused that they didn't use the actual voice actor for Migi to do it from the anime, but I guess they wanted to do their own thing, and that's fine. And again, this person was good too. So, there are some definite changes between the anime and this adaptation. There are some combinations and changes to parts of the story. However, I'm not certain that those aren't in the manga since I haven't read it. But honestly, taken all together, I think the movie does a really good job of capturing the spirit and usually the tone of the anime, which I really appreciated. It's something that you can sometimes lose very easily, I feel like, in those sorts of adaptations, especially, again, with something as outlandish as this. Myself, I'm really excited to see part 2. I've heard that part 2 isn't as good as part 1, which is a shame. But I did really like this part, and I probably will be watching it in maybe the next couple of days, pretty much as soon as humanly possible. If I can get a hold of a copy of it, and I think I know someone who has one. So yeah, it's gonna be whatever. I'll review it then, but I'm really excited for it. I just wasn't expecting this level of quality, honestly. It seems like this has a much bigger budget than some of these live action adaptations do. And I don't know, maybe they've just gotten better since the last ones that I've watched. I honestly, even if I have watched the anime series, I tend to skip out on the adaptations. They don't have a habit of being super good. And I really honestly, since I've started this project, I haven't really had a ton of time to watch new anime to begin with. Watching one movie a day means, probably on the low side, usually an hour and a half per day that I'm already spending on TV. And then I have to do the reviews and everything, and I have to upload everything and convert everything and edit the audio, which, believe me, especially when I'm on my own, is really hard because there's a ton of stuff I have to edit out when I am just babbling, like right now. If you enjoy the anime, I definitely can't say whether or not you'll enjoy this, but I can tell you that I did. I really liked some of the acting. They do a good job of capturing the mood, as I said. And there's a couple of scenes that they took directly from the source material that do a really good job of doing what I thought they did in the anime, which I thought was going to be a little bit harder to really make that play in live action, but they do a good job of it. As I said, there are some things that get combined and some things that get cut out from the story, but honestly, I don't think any of those are things where I'm like, wow, why would you possibly do that? It's usually just to prevent having to introduce a new character to do something when it only does one small thing or whatever. So, I don't know. If you're super anal retentive diehard fan of either of the source material works, then I have no idea whether you'll like it. I know sometimes people are just set against anything like this. But I really enjoyed it, honestly. I was pleasantly surprised. And again, I'm probably grading a little bit on a scale because I have seen a lot of really bad live action adaptations of stuff. I actually have a couple on my list that I didn't realize that they had adapted. And then I found out that they've made them into live action adaptations. So look forward to some more of those in the near future, probably. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really know what else to say about it. If you're a fan, check it out. It's probably worth checking out even if you don't like it. If you've never seen Parasyte, you can still probably watch it if you're into really weird Japanese, like, stuff. Like, sort of gory Japanese movies. I think you'll probably find something to enjoy in this, even if this is a different kind of weird than some of those are. And maybe it'll make you want to watch the anime, which, again, I really liked. Beyond that, maybe doesn't have the broadest appeal, again, but, you know, I say if you can get your hands on a copy of it and, you know, or if somebody tells you, hey, I want to watch this thing, and now you've heard of it, I don't know, check it out. If you don't like it, you can always play on your phone. It's fine. Anyway, so that's my weird meandering review of Parasyte Part 1 from 2014. Okay, so while Sam was not able to watch Parasyte with me, he did watch the other movie that I wanted to review. Now, I'm skipping ahead quite a bit in my reviews, just to compare and contrast anime adaptations, anime/manga adaptations, to do Death Note from 2017. Sam, how did you like Death Note from 2017?
I did not like it. I did not like it. I did not like it.
Yeah.
I might sound like anybody else who watched the movie, but I did not like it.
So, Sam, when he saw this, had not seen a single episode of the anime. I have seen all of it, and had seen all of it by the time I've seen this. I have not read any of the manga again for this. I just don't read that much manga. So, yeah, my feelings for this are probably a little on the nicer side. I still don't think it's good, but I made a conscious decision when I watched this to separate my feelings for the anime from my feelings for this movie. And honestly, I don't think it's very good, but I thought it could have been worse, I guess, is the best way of putting it. So, in the movie, the premise basically is a high school student named Light Turner. In the anime, it's Light Yagami, but whatever. Light Turner comes to possess a notebook with supernatural powers. While there are any number of rules about it, the basic way that it works is that when someone writes a name in this death note while picturing the person's face, they die. When Light decides to use the book to mete out punishment for people he decides are worthy of punishment, a detective known only as L takes it upon himself to find and stop the person responsible for the seemingly impossible crimes. So, yeah, I think most people who watch the anime are not gonna like this movie. I really do. So do you remember, what specifically did you feel? I actually wrote down what you felt about it right after the movie, but let's let you do that if you can remember.
Okay. Well, I didn't watch the anime or read the manga. Skipped right to the Netflix movie.
Obviously the best one.
King of the Crowd.
Yeah.
I watched a few episodes of the anime after I had seen the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was okay. I had a hard time getting into it.
Mm-hmm.
But, I thought it was, like, weird. The pacing was kind of weird.
Mm-hmm.
The acting was weird. No, I don't. And now that you said that you have on record.
On record.
What I said, now I'm feeling kind of weird about saying how I felt about it.
Okay.
To not contradict myself.
Okay. Well, nothing that you said is wrong. Really, one of the things that you focused on is that you said that you thought the movie focused spent too much time focusing on imitating the wrong details of the source material. Like, the two things that you mentioned when we were talking about this were Elle, who is the detective the young detective who's trying to find out who Light is. The killer calls himself Kira, which is Light, which you know if you watch it. Anyway, but it focused a lot on Elle's penchant for sweets and how he sits in chairs, and you both correctly assumed this was stuff from the anime.
Yeah.
And I assume from the manga.
Yeah, okay, I remember that.
Rather than the things that made the anime and manga so successful, which obviously the people who made this movie just didn't know what made it successful. And that I thought was really interesting that you were able to pick up on those. I mean, they're pretty obvious things, but...
Yeah, because it feels like something they're trying to, like, imitate, opposed to...
Yeah.
Have the story feel, like, natural and real.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's interesting that they tried to imitate stuff and try to be, like, true to the source material.
In those ways.
But the movie's bad.
Yeah.
Like, the movie's bad. Like...
Yeah.
Arguably really bad.
Yeah. Yeah, it said overall, the main feeling that you had is that the movie was really shallow. Parts of it might have been interesting or clever, but the portrayals of the characters were fairly basic. The relationship between Light and his love interest in this movie, who's called Mia, that's Misa from the books and everything. But it's hard to buy as the characters have no real chemistry or reason to be together beyond hormones and basic plot convenience. And besides that, Mia is a dick. Do you remember saying that?
She sucks.
She's totally a dick. There's one reason that they imply why she's such a dick, but it isn't explicitly discussed, which really felt like a true flaw to me. And again, the pacing of the movie you thought was really good.
Okay.
I also thought the pacing was pretty good. But yeah, I think probably my biggest problem with the movie was the characters, and that's what you said too. They've lost a lot of their defining traits and charm. I mean, obviously the superficial stuff like the sweets and all that, that's still there. But not any of the really deep stuff. Mia made me so angry in this movie because I love Misa. I think she's a great character. She has an incredible arc, and her arc and personality are completely different in this. Insultingly different, honestly. I mean, it feels like I think a lot of my super ultra hardcore feminist friends would be just not just insulted. I think they'd be enraged if they had seen where the anime goes with this and where this movie goes with it. And I would totally buy that. I would totally understand that. Light and Elle are far more ruled by their emotions than the characters are, or at least allow themselves to be in the anime most of the time. And their relationship to each other is basically non-existent, which is really a shame. They both come off as a lot less clever than they are, and Light feels really immature, which in some ways it works to simplify why he would choose to use the Death Note in the first place, but it also makes him so much less charismatic, which was one of his major traits, I felt like, from the anime. Elle betrays several of his motivations and characteristics from the source material, which on its own is not necessarily a problem, but when coupled with the lack of clarity of his motivations in the film on its own, it becomes a big problem. So what did you think about the plot? Did you find it, clever and cat and mouse and intriguing?
Yeah, no, it's not.
No.
I think the biggest problem with the movie is it's, like, kind of muddled.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't really know what it wants to say or be or do.
Yeah.
It seems like they have kind of like a certain perspective in the beginning, and they try to like change it or see the problems with that perspective, but it never like feels like it's very focused on what that is or what anybody's doing at any time. Right. You feel like people are just doing things. Right. And you're like, why are they doing this? and that's the movie.
Yeah, and see, and this is to me, this is one of the more obvious failings and the biggest failings, is the anime is something that almost would appeal to a mystery fan, in that, like, they get themselves into these situations and you're like, there's no way for them to get out of this. Like, how are they possibly going to do it? Or that they have to do something that is so risky and dangerous or whatever that you can't imagine that they do it. And then sometimes they do, and sometimes they find some other way out. But I mean, the cat and mouse is the most intense part of the anime. And this, in this, I mean, to be fair, the anime had 30 plus episodes and to be able to do that. And that can be really hard to come across in a movie that, I don't know, it was under 2 hours, wasn't it?
Yeah, it wasn't very long.
Yeah. So there's only so much time you can afford to the cat and mouse, but it's almost entirely cut from the movie. The Battle of Wits is completely underplayed and at least partially swapped out for suspense of a, different sort of nature. It's more about the physical danger that the characters are in, which I enjoyed a lot less. Again, it takes a long time to build in cat and mouse, and they didn't have a lot of time. Even if they made this 2.5 hours, they probably wouldn't have been able to fit a lot of it in there. But there's none in this, and that's the whole thing that made the anime successful.
It feels like something that needs to be very tension-filled.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not.
No.
Other... I don't think the acting's super strong in the movie. I don't think the plot is super well thought out.
Yeah.
So, especially without there not being tension in the moments where there needs to be.
Yeah.
It really, I think those are the things that make the movie not work.
Yeah. Well, the problems with the acting, to me, can mostly be traced back to the writing and the direction.
Right.
And both Light and Mia are fairly unlikable almost the whole movie. And their acting
Elle's not terribly likable either.
I liked Elle. I actually did.
I disagree. I think they're the most likable.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like they don't even give Al enough time to be likable.
I guess that's probably true.
Because Al isn't in the whole movie. There's only a certain portion. You get his motivation.
Yeah.
But it's he's this way, and then this happens, and now he's this way.
Right.
And you're just this is snapped right away.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's... I liked Elle well enough. It's probably more... I think the reason why is because, again, I'm familiar with his character from the anime, and I feel like even though his character is definitely different, he plays it in a manner that's different, but it's also something that feels familiar, and it feels somewhat like what you felt about the character, to me anyway, what you felt about Elle from the anime, and so it feels like a natural extension. Light is a completely different character. Mia is a completely different character. So it feels like they're completely different and wrong. And I feel like even though Elle is different, he was definitely different, but I did appreciate where they went with it. And I thought the actor did a good enough job. I thought the actor was really good.
I think you could really tell that all the actors were trying.
Yeah,
they weren't necessarily terrible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Al, probably being the best, but it seemed like he probably had more to work with.
Yeah, well, and some of the differences between the two characters I actually prefer, between Elle in the anime and in the movie, I did actually think I preferred some of those differences, which is something I didn't expect. But yeah, well, what did you think about Ryuk?
Oh, they were good. Willem Dafoe.
Yeah, Willem Dafoe.
Was good, for sure.
Yeah. Ryuk is a character who's related to the Death Note, and it's not a human character. So, I actually really liked his portrayal is, I think, spot on of Ryuk. I think it is actually pretty similar to what it is in the anime. And so, I liked Willem Dafoe, but I felt like the creators, the filmmakers, were afraid to really show too much of him because he's not human.
He's actually not in it very much either.
Yeah.
Like I said, I saw the first few episodes of the anime.
And he's in it a ton.
He's almost more the main character.
Yeah, for sure. How many times?
In retrospect, I'm probably mad that he's not in the movie more. Because he's probably the best character in the movie and a very good character in the anime. Yeah. A very strong character. With a lot of personality. Mm-hmm. And maybe that's what the movie's lacking, a little bit of personality.
Yeah. Well, and Ryuk, I mean, how many times did you hear him say, humans are so interesting in the 3 episodes or whatever that you watched? And that he probably said that more times than he had any screen time in this.
Yeah, he has very little, he has comparatively very little screen time.
He has like 2 monologues and then a couple of throwaway lines and that's it. But I thought Willem Dafoe was spot on. Like,
oh yeah, he was very good. He was very good at that, actually.
And I totally understand why the filmmakers would be a little bit afraid to show
but that's the
too
movie
much of him.
They're making,
exactly.
So
you chose to make this movie. See, Parasyte, I just talked to these fine people listening to my podcast about Parasyte.
The fan.
The fan.
Thanks for listening.
Hey, Pumpkin. Now there's a couple other people listening. My grandma listened to one of the episodes before.
We're doing it.
But anyway, Parasyte was one that I really didn't expect to be able to do a very good adaptation. It has such outlandish visuals and stuff, and don't get me wrong, they're outlandish in the movie, and they're probably too outlandish for a lot of audiences. But in this, Ryuk is the only thing that has any physical, like, difference from reality, really. And they felt like they weren't able to put him hardly in the movie. He's always in a shadow. He's behind stuff. He's lurking and, it sucked. It makes me even more angry having seen Parasyte, which again, I liked, because Parasyte didn't back away from itself. Parasyte did what it was supposed to. It did the things that made the anime successful. And this, again, Ryuk is one of the reasons people like it. People like Ryuk. There's always, cosplayers doing Ryuk every time there's an event somewhere. And he's such a great character, but they had to completely nuke all of his screen time because they're like, oh, but he looks crazy and he's the only crazy looking thing in this.
Yeah, or maybe they didn't have the budget for it, or...
I didn't feel like it was a budget issue. I felt like, that scene with it, well...
I know, and they don't even have him, like, say in shadow, something easy to render, saying things. He's mostly just not in it.
Yeah, they mostly just extricate him from the whole thing. Yeah, he's just not even there. Which, it just doesn't, I don't know. I just didn't really appreciate that, especially considering, like, again, contrasting this with Parasyte, where they did everything. They didn't shy away from anything. I mean, maybe the weird stuff didn't get, 100% the portion of screen time that it maybe does in the anime, but I don't even know if that's true. I think it's pretty close. So I think they chickened out. And I think that was a poor decision. I thought that Ryuk did look pretty decent. I mean, he doesn't look like a real thing that would be alive, which is maybe a problem, but I thought he looked neat for what he was. I mean, he looks weird in the anime. He looks out of place in the anime. So, you're the ones who decided to make the Death Note movie, man. So there were some weird and really obvious plot holes and some stuff that exists completely for plot convenience in this movie, and that was really a shame. It's been years since I've watched Death Note, so I don't remember if there were a lot of these types of problems with the show, but I can assure you they were not as large or as obvious as they were, as some, 1 or 2 of them at least were in the movie. I won't talk specifically about what they are because it's just, it's not worth going into, and you'll notice them yourself. And if you don't, hey, maybe it'll help increase your opinion of this movie and you'll have a better time watching it. So, was there anything else that you wanted to say about this one?
No, not really.
Is there anyone that you would suggest this movie to?
No, not really. I don't know. I think the reason why anybody watched it was just I got a curiosity to see how it was changed from the anime or manga or just the way a Western production adaptation production of it would be. Willem Dafoe's good in it. It's a hard recommend. It's not very good, and it's not bad enough in like a bad way to be like, this is hilarious, watch it. Right. It's just I just feel like it tried something and it didn't really work. Right.
So I think some people who have no intention of watching the anime might find some enjoyment out of this movie. It is interesting on some levels, certainly. But fans of the anime, if you can't put yourself, your expectations or your opinions and feelings for the anime aside when you watch this movie, you're almost definitely not going to enjoy it. There's not really any specific group I would say, like, you should watch this. I know there are a number of Japanese adaptations. I think they've had like 6 Death Note movies or something crazy like that. And I think those they look ridiculous in the same way that most Japanese anime adaptations tend to be. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, maybe you can try those and they might be better. I have no idea. At least then I know they won't shy away from Ryuk, because I have seen a photo of Ryuk in one of those and he's in it. So, honestly, I think this kind of feels like a toss-up. I think most people probably wouldn't enjoy it, and I think most people who are fans of the anime will definitely not like it. So, I don't know. If you were interested in Death Note and hate anime for some weird reason, it's a weird crossover group, go ahead and try it. Did you have anything else you wanted to say?
No.
Okay.
We gotta wrap this one up. We're recording 20 episodes.
20 episodes all today. We're gonna go on vacation. So, Samuel, what's your rating for Death Note?
I'll give it 2 animes out of 10.
2 animes out of 10. Would not bang, huh?
Yeah, would not. Yeah, 2 animes would not bang.
Okay, well, thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this, please rate, review, subscribe, whatever it is on whatever site it is that you found this. If you don't like the platform on which you're currently watching or listening to this, you can find us on YouTube, iTunes. Why did I could not remember iTunes? Stitcher, Podcast Addict, or pretty much any of the major podcatchers. And you can reach out to me on social media at Recluse Horror on pretty much everything. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and you can email me at reclusehorror@gmail.com. Please do, if you're listening to the show or whatever. We'd love to hear from you. Yeah, I think that's it. Well, thanks, and have a good night. Sam, say bye.
Bye.